Okay, then, welcome to my session. I want to talk about becoming a business application superstar in 5 steps. Um, if you don't know me, my name is Nicole. I'm working as a managing consultant, or sometimes I'm talking about that I'm working as a workplace technology scout. So I'm looking for all the new technologies out there. And I'm also an MVP for Office Apps and Services with a focus on Teams and the Power Platform. And as you can see here, I brought my favorite hashtags with me, and then you know what's all about. So it's a mix. You can do to build business applications in an easy way. How you can do this with the Power Platform. But I have also two pretty new topics for me, and one of this is collaborative apps and the other one is mixed reality. And I think in a modern workplace everything comes together, so that's cool. If you want to contact me later on, you find here my contact information also. So I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter pretty often. Yeah, and so I would say let's start. And I'll love to introduce Tanya to you. So Tanya is one of my colleagues, and she has to go through every presentation with me. So it's really cool to tell a story about this. And Tanya is working in the HR department. And yes, we have a regular meeting, so some kind of a coffee break, and then Tanya talks about what she is doing and I talk about what I am doing. And in one of our previous talks, she said, Nicole, we need a business application. You have no idea how boring a special part of my job is. Yeah, and then I said, okay, tell me a little bit more about this. And I recognized that I was doing some time of an internal consultancy at this moment, because I asked her the same questions I would do for an external customer. And I started first, what about our current business process? So tell me a little bit about this. And she was talking about the recruiting process. So she said that there are several ways how to recruit new employees in our company. And the first one is, okay, I was on an event and I talked to another person, and this person thinks about applying for a new job in our company. He didn't enter his application on our website. He didn't send an email. He was only talking with somebody in our company. Yeah, and then as you may guess, there are other ways. So maybe we get applications in our on our website, and we get applications via email, and so on and so on. And Tanya said, okay, there are many different processes, and you have a single tool, and you have to enter everything there. How should it work? And if she talks about this topic with her colleagues in the HR department, and we are a huge company, so we have different departments and so on. And her other colleagues said, okay, I'm using this tool, and another person is using this tool, but there's no central database for everything. And that's what she's thinking about. There has to be a better solution for this stuff. Yeah, and then I said, okay, now I think I understand your problem. So you are thinking about one single place of truth, and everything will be there. But if this is the next one, should we optimize something? So should we change the business process, or do you want to select an existing process in one of the today used tools? And she said, yes, I like the idea of the business process and the application I am using. And maybe we can add something I'm thinking about the process when we hire a new employee. And I know that David is doing this in the right way. So maybe we have a business application based on my process, and then we optimize it a little bit and are extending the solution with David's stuff. Said, yeah, okay, we can do this. Maybe it would be a good idea to talk with everybody of your colleagues, because then we have a better chance for user adoption later on. Yeah, and she said, okay, when we talk to, if we talk with everybody, then everybody will have some ideas, and we will have to have a lot of work to do. And that's why we were not sure how to do this. And I said, yeah, okay, if you want to develop a solution, then you need all the requirements. You need a good overview of the requirements even at the beginning. And also the case if you are going with an agile method, you need to have this overview. And you are the expert of your business process. Yeah, and that was the reason why I asked the third question. So the third question is, do we support the whole business process with an IT solution? Because maybe there are some parts today which are not supported with an application. And now we have to think about if we want to have a solution which covers 100% of the process, or if we say, okay, there are always some parts where person one talks to person two, and we only need the result to be entered in the application to proceed with the process. So you see a lot of questions to do there, and we need a lot of answers. And yeah, I said to Tanya, we have different options to get to your final business solution, so to your recruiting system. I would say it would be a good idea that you start building your solution. And Tanya was asking me, are you kidding me? I should build this business solution. Isn't it a part or a task for a software developer? Yeah, and I said to Tanya, you have a lot of tools to work with, so maybe you can build your own solution. So let's start. Maybe you are doing a first try, so it's a first draft version, and then we have a meeting and we see what I can do for you, or if you say everything is fine for me. And so Tanya started. And Tanya's first thought was, oh, I'm using SharePoint the whole day for different stuff. So I'm working on documents with other colleagues. So maybe it's a good idea to have SharePoint as a database. So it's quite easy to create new lists with my necessary fields. So she was thinking about, I need some information of the candidates. So address-based information, the name, maybe some other information entered on a form on our website when the person applied for a job. And I also need a second list for the applications itself. So maybe a candidate applies for different jobs during the time. So we have two lists, and I have a lookup. So I know that the candidate one applies for this job and candidate two applies for another job, for example. So Tanya started. She created the lists. She was thinking about the necessary fields, so the information she wants to manage, and she changed the order of these fields, so it feels pretty nice. Here, as we see in the slide here for the candidate or the upcoming employees, what's about the email, last name, first name, and so on. And she knew that she can add simple validations. So think about mandatory fields. What is the minimal version of information you need for a candidate and for an application? So she did this. And then she struggled a little bit because she was thinking about one of our meetings in the past, and it's a few years ago, but she was she remembered this talk with me, and she was thinking about InfoPass forms. So I know InfoPass forms is pretty old, and as you can see here, it's also deprecated. But there are a lot of InfoPass forms out there in the different companies. And Tanya understood that the InfoPass Designer was a cool tool to build electronic forms, and it was part of the MS Office suite. So she was looking for InfoPass now on her PC, and she didn't find it. So she was talking with our colleagues who are responsible for our hardware and software environment. And I don't know why, but she got an environment where she could use the InfoPass Designer. And then she was thinking about how should the form look like for an application. So as you can see here, it was some kind of a tool for power users to create these electronic forms. You had a lot of more options than in standard SharePoint to work on the layout and so on. And you could also add more rules. So it was not only the mandatory fields, which could be configured with validations. You could also add some rules that maybe you have to add a value in a special field, and then the next area with the upcoming 10 fields will be visible, or otherwise you could split your form into different views. So that's why you could create some kind of a wizard. And that was really cool to support a business process, because you start with a small set of information, and during the business process, you are extending or completing this information more and more. And at the end, it was cool for Tanya that she can send an email with the different version, different information. So think about some different processes, like an approval process, for example. Yeah, so Tanya was thinking about this. But then she ran into a problem, because she created the SharePoint list, the SharePoint Online, and she had some kind of a hack with this InfoPass environment. And now she was thinking about, what can I do? I want to complete my solution. I have no connection between my SharePoint list and my InfoPass form. Maybe I talk to one of our software developers. That was the situation where I wasn't available. I was on vacation. So she was talking to somebody in my team. And Daniel was there. And he heard what Tanya was doing, and he was thinking about, how can I help her? He had a look on the SharePoint list, he had a look on the InfoPass forms, and he said, that's a nice prototype. Maybe we can do this in a more professional way. And then he started talking, and he said, okay, I will build you a really cool solution. It will be based on HTML. I have to design it a little bit. I know that you want to look it in a pretty way. So we have some CSS right there. And I'm not sure if we are thinking about the employee database. You want to store the data later on. Maybe we need a web service based on .NET. I need a PowerShell script to install everything. And did you hear about SPFX? So if you want to have an integration into SharePoint, then I will build some cool web parts for you. Yes, and Tanya was a little bit overwhelmed regarding this conversation, and she asked herself, what is he talking about? I really hope that he understands me, because Tanya was thinking about my recommendation that she starts building the application, and then later on we have to do maybe some adjustments, or she can complete the solution. And now she understood that Daniel will have a look on her solution, but he will not use anything of her solution. He will build it from scratch. So Daniel has to have a good understanding of the business process. And we all know this gap between the person who is the expert of the business process and the person who has to build an application. So that's where we have to ask, aren't there any other options there? And as I said in the introduction of my session, yes, there are other options. And we will have a look in the live demo at this, because I think the world has changed. And as you see here, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so there's nearly no session without some Lord of the Rings stuff in it. But I think this quote is really good for our topic here. So the world has changed. In the past, you had this gap with the expert of the business process and the expert of building a business solution. Now we are getting closer and closer, because it's time for the makers. And there are a lot of buzzwords out there. So think about makers, citizen developers, solution creators. What is really important is you can build your own app. And our playground is all about Microsoft 365. And thinking about Tanya started with SharePoint lists, or Microsoft lists in this case. The wording depends if you start from a SharePoint website and you are building your lists there, or if you are building your lists in the list service in Microsoft, but it's the same way how to do this. But Tanya didn't know that there are other options. And now I want to explain what I would recommend to do. So if we are going in our playground in Microsoft 365 and we have a look on the tools for you as a maker, then we are here with the Power Platform. And the Power Platform has 4 main tools, which you may see on the different community events, and they are supported by other components or other solution parts. So think about PowerApps as the first one. So PowerApps is used to build apps and websites, and these apps can be used mobile as well. If you are supporting a business process, then we have to talk about Power Automate, because Power Automate is the service to support or to build workflows. We are only talking about flows, but I think that's a shorter name for workflows. And I have only a few Power Apps which are not using a flow in Power Automate. So you have a very close relationship between these two. If you are building a business solution and you want to see or you want to control your data, then Power BI becomes relevant to you. So you can build cool dashboards, you can analyze your business data, and you can do better decisions based on this information. And Power Virtual Agents is the tool to build some kind of a chatbot and to support business process in a different way, because you are not using a user interface where you think about where this button should be placed and where an input field should be. No, you have a conversational chatbot, and this chatbot can be some kind of an agent, so he can trigger a business process. And maybe if you have a long conversation and the automatic solution is not the right for you, then all the conversation can be go to a real person, so a real agent, and you have a call with him, and then you get the solution. I hope so. So, and if we have a look at the bottom here of this the screen, then you see the data connectors. So data connectors are all the connection to every data in your company. So in Microsoft 365, but also to other applications, and you can even build your own data connectors. Own data connectors, I would say that's the job of a software developer. We are using the data connectors which are available for us. The AI builder, that's pretty cool. For example, if you want to extract information of your existing documents like invoices and so on. And last but not least, we have the Dataverse, and Dataverse is the database in your company. So you will see in the demo now that we will use this database to store the data of our candidates and the applications. And then later on, maybe we can use this data for an employee database and so on. So we have a single point of information. And only one last slide before we switch to the demo tenant where I want to show something. I really recommend that you have a look at what's going on in Microsoft Dynamics 365, because that's the business process platform in the Microsoft universe. And there are a lot of business applications which can be used out of the box. And I know that Dynamics 365 has a very expansive licensing, but it seems to be an expensive licensing if you compare this to building all these business applications by your own, or if you have to license all these business applications from other vendors. If you want to have a single point of information, then Microsoft Dynamics 365 can be a good option for you. And Dynamics uses the Dataverse as a database and the Power Platform. So everything we see in this live demo now is the same as we are talking about by the Dynamics. So that's the situation where I switch to the demo environment. And we are here. And first of all, if we are talking to create a solution, I could go here with apps or create. I have a recommendation for you. Go with solutions. So if you have a solution, then everything which belongs together is in one place. So as I said, I have a lot of Power Apps which need a flow in Power Automate. And if I create a solution, then I have the flow and the Power App and maybe other stuff later on here together. And before I create a new solution for us, I want to show you a solution I've created a long time ago, because it's a good example to see what's going on in a solution. And as you see here, you have some kind of solution explorer. So I see that I have 4 items. That's 1 app, 1 sitemap, and 2 tables. And if we are talking about tables, then we are talking about the Dataverse. So for Tanya and for you, it's nothing else. If you would create a SharePoint list, then you would think about the different columns you need. If you are talking about a table, then you are thinking about the columns also. So it's only another location where you store your data. And as you can see here, I have a list of all my stuff because I have no filter set here at the moment. And I see that I'm using a model-driven app. And a model-driven app comes with a sitemap. A sitemap is nothing else than a navigation. Yeah, and it seems so that I'm using these 2 tables in my model-driven app. The wording here is in German, but it's the application and it's the candidate right here. So only to see what's going on in the solution, I go back and I create our own solution now here. and I say, okay, what's the display name? It's, I say, Plat Bootcamp. Maybe it's a global. And as you see here, the name, that's the internal name. It's set, it's without the spaces. And I have to select a publisher. And as you see here in my demo environment, there is a publisher called like my company. But you can create your own publisher. And that's really cool. If you have solutions in your environment from other vendors, then they will have this publisher name, and you see in a really good overview what's going on there. So I say, okay, that's my publisher, and I create the solution. And this solution will be empty for sure after the creation. Here it is, and I go here in it, and as you see, I have no items right in here. And why did I show you the other solution? Because I want to explain that we can have different applications, so different business applications based on the same data in the Dataverse. So think about that. The other solution is doing some general stuff, which is relevant for our HR department, but not for the recruiting process itself. And now I want to work with the same data, and then I can go with add existing. And I say, okay, I want to add existing tables. And now I'm not scrolling through everything. I'm looking for my 2 tables. I have here my candidate. Okay, next one. I want to include all components because I configured a lot of stuff for my table already. So, and now my first table shows up. I'm doing this the same for the application table. Oh. If I wouldn't set this options, then something would be missing, and you will see this if we check our first version of the app, what would be missing there. Yeah, and as you see here, I can add nearly everything. So maybe you also created an app and you want to include this now in your solution. You created some flows, or you're working with Power Virtual Agents. You want to add a chatbot. You want to add some stuff from Power BI and so on. So a lot of stuff there. And you have the same options here for new, because I think you will always have something you want to create new. You are not building a solution for only existing stuff. So we have a new app, and I'm going with a model-driven app. And before I'm doing this, I want to talk about the differences between Canvas and model-driven app. So a Canvas app is dedicated to be to have a really flexible layout. Maybe you want to build an app which has a special start screen and so on, and you're thinking about the data and the data connectors in the second step. And if you want to build an app which is based on a business process where the data is the most important, and you don't need a really flexible layout, then a model-driven app will be the better option. So I'm going with the model-driven app. And as you can see here, I can go with a modern app designer and a classic app designer. For this one, I go first with the classic app designer and I create the solution. And at this point, I have to add a name for my app, and I can also add a description and so on. So hey, now it's here. So I say HR thing. So bootcamp. So, and then I say I'm done. And now the app will be created. And I like to start with the classic designer because here you get an overview. What are the different parts of your app? In the modern designer, and I will show this to you also, they are the same. There's the same stuff, but it doesn't remind you what you can add in your app there. So what I'm doing here, first of all, I want to add my 2 tables. And yeah, you may have thought about that the 2 tables would be there automatically, but that's not the case because in your solution you could build different apps. And so this app designer doesn't know that it's important for you to have these ones. So I'm going with my candidate and I'm going with my application. I only have to set this check mark, and then I have everything here, and I have everything in it. So if you have different forms to add a new application, to edit an existing one, and so on, then you can work with this. You have all these views and you have all the reporting stuff. And the next stuff I have to do is to configure the sitemap. So that's my navigation, and you see this warning symbol here. So that's relevant for me. So I'm going to the sitemap. And my sitemap is pretty empty, but you see that I have 3 levels in my navigation. So I have an area, a group, and a sub area. And maybe I call my area core, because the base information. I call my group master data because I want to add the master data information. And here is the reason why my sitemap had this warning symbol, because I have to select what is about this menu item. And I say, I want to add my application there. I have to say that's an entity. So I had my entity, this one, it's fine. And if you are looking from a developer perspective, then this ID is really important. So I want to see what's going on there. And I want to have clear IDs so that I know what's this menu item about, because I add another one. And now you see that my ID gets some ID stuff behind this. So maybe I would say that's a menu item. Candidate. Here also the same. I say entity, and I'm looking for the candidate. So I think that's enough for the first version. I saved my sitemap, and what's important is that you publish your sitemap. And if we are going back to our app, then it's also important to store and publish our app itself. So I say save, I say publish. And then I can play my app. So at this moment, it's only available for me, but it could also be published later on or shared with other persons. So at this moment, it's only for me to check if everything is fine. And as we see here, we have our group master data. We have the 2 menu items, and that's really cool. That's why I added the existing tables. We have data in our tables. So I can work with data which was added through another app. And now I can do whatever I want. So we go first with the candidate. Let's say new candidate. And then if you are working with Dynamics, then you may feel familiar because the layout is the same here with the contact information. You know how a tab looks like because we have detail information and summary and so on. So there's a lot of stuff which is done for us automatically if we are going with the Dataverse and the model-driven app. And if I'm going with the applications, that's the one I want to show you before we go with the modern app designer, then I can also add a new application, but I want to show you one application which is already existing here, and maybe we go with, I would say this one. And what you can see here is the business process. So we don't have only the data table, and we add our data, and we are thinking about how this form here looks like. We have also the chance to build our business process, and it seems to have only these 4 steps here. But you can build a business process flow which has a validation maybe here in the part of the initial rating, so that the following step could be in one case interviews, but in another one it could be the end of the business process. So you can add conditions. So maybe in some situations after an interview you could switch back to new or to initial rating. It's completely up to you. And for the business process flows, I like to use the classic designer because here is a separate part for the business process flows. If I click on this, I see that all existing business process flows are available, and I added this business process flows for my application table. So if I go here, I uncheck everything, and I'm going with this flow, and I want to edit this. I could also do this via Power Automate, but here my app I want to work with this. Then you see that I have here new, initial rating, interviews, and decision. So that's my flow itself. I have some data steps to be filled out. So if I click on the bubble in my application, then I can add multiple data. And I could also, as you see here, I could start a workflow or a flow in Power Automate. So you can do automatic steps if you go from one stage to the next one. So that's why I love this entity or application designer in the classic layout. If you go back here, say, okay, yeah, for me, yeah, everything is done. See, it refreshes, and now we have the same layout as we had for the existing solution I showed first. And now I'm going with a model-driven app, and I say I want to go with a modern app designer. Please keep in mind it's in preview. Then you see I'm in Power Apps, and maybe it's familiar from the Canvas Power Apps if you you worked with this in the past. And now I say HR, recruiting, and I say modern. And now it's up to me what I want to do with this. So I could create different pages. So maybe I want to have some kind of a welcome page. And after this, maybe I would talk about my navigation. So you have this group 1 and the sub area. If I want to go with the sub area, then it asks me, okay, what do you want? Do you want to have a table? Which table do you want to select? I could go with candidate. So it feels the same, and I get a preview. That's cooler in this modern designer, that I get a preview. I see immediately how it would look like for the user later on, but I have not the single administrative view to work with. So that's the difference here. And before I run out of time, I go back to the slides because I said the session is named how to become a business application superstar in 5 steps, and that seems to be a checklist. And so I have a checklist for you at the end. It's not a technical checklist, because for me it's really important that you have some steps to get familiar with all this stuff and to do your first steps. So first one is take responsibility. Be a citizen developer, a maker, a solution creator. As I said, they are all synonyms. If you said, okay, I want to start with building solutions, then learn to use the tools of the Power Platform. It's up to you. If you start with Power Automate, or if you start with PowerApps, my recommendation is to choose one of them first, because if you have a flow, then maybe you will like to build your first app after a few flows, and otherwise the same. Think about where you want to store your data. So if you saw now that Dataverse is a cool solution, then maybe it's a better one than storing everything in Excel lists and SharePoint lists and so on. And that's really important. Create a quick win solution. So don't think in a huge scenario, because then you will get some frustrating moments. And if you have a small solution, start with this one. Maybe you have the second small solution and a third one. And so you complete your big picture with a huge solution, but you will have a lot of more fun. And inspire your colleagues. So I like the slogan, together we achieve more, and you can have it as an acronym for team. If you have a team and you are doing the stuff together, then it's a lot of fun if you are doing this instead of you doing this on your own. And last but not least, share your knowledge and talk about what you are doing. Do this in your company, do this on several events. Everybody who is doing a session on the community event started in a small area, and then he's had his first talk because he decided that it's relevant for others. And there's always a person who's thankful if he gets a tip from you. So I think I finished. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Nicole. There is an interesting discussion going on in the chat, so you can join the chat and join the discussion. I think I fully agree with your bullets in regards of 5 steps, and I'm second on that from the IT operation guy, from the IT administration guy, who was not a business consultant, but was doing things like making things happening. So if you will not take responsibility for your business, then the business will go somewhere else and find another solution, which you can see on my last session together with Andrzej. We have done it. We took the responsibility. So it was great. Super. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and have a nice day.